Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Soda Citizen podcast. Today, we are going to be exploring the history of Forest Acres and kind of the vision and mission of where it's going. So why don't you introduce our guests?
So, of course, we have John Sherrer over here, the director of Knowing Everything from Historic Columbia. Just kidding. He is the lead
director of cultural resources.
Yeah, the director of Knowing It All. No, but John is a staple of this show because he knows
everything.
Everything in history. And we like that.
Lifelong learning, not everything. Not yet.
And Kelly Barbrey, she's the VP of Marketing and Communications at Experience Columbia, which we'll dig a little more into as well. So we've got the two pros of what's going on in the Columbia area, but we're talking about Forest Acres, which is going to be interesting.
Very interesting.
So let's start off a little bit. John, you got a book, so you've been reading. I appreciate that. Studying up.
It's really good.
Is it like the history of Forest Acres?
It is the history of Forest Acres, and this is published by Arcadia Press. It came out in 2010, so that's a decade ago now.
Ooh.
Right. By Dr. Warmontgomery. And this is available really throughout Columbia, and for those who are interested in it, this is kind of the go-to for not just good history, but also a lot of really interesting photographs through the decades.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've done some intellectual reading myself on Forest Acres. What are some cool things that Forest Acres is known for, how it got started, or anything that you can really share when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people today, when they look at Forest Acres, they see a very livable community that is very close to downtown Columbia for all intents and purposes. It's a place where there is a lot of activity, a great deal of amenities. Everything from, schools, places to eat, places to shop, places to recreate. It's something that has a little bit for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gets people excited. And it's something that's accessible for a lot of demographics as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We the previous podcast we had Mayor and Councilman Barnes on the show, and we were chit-chatting, but look, we probably do about 20% of our sales in the Forest Acres area. Forest Acres is really hard to define, by the way. Like there's not like a straight up like this road and that road. And I kind of I live across from Forest Acres. Like the houses across the street are always in Forest Acres with me. So
he's considering the annex.
Now that I've cut down all my trees, I'm considering the annex. But with that being said, I think you're right. And I thought the history is really neat on Forest Acres on how it was incorporated in 35. But like 1913, I think it was one of the Coopers, who are still a prominent family in the Forest Acres area, bought like 1,700 acres. And they started developing it around like the Forest Acres, now Forest Lake.
Yeah, when I think of Forest Acres and think of the way it developed, obviously you have to get Columbia's kind of tentacles, if you would, going out through some of the main thoroughfares. So we think today, of course, Trenholm Road, we think Forest Drive, and to see how that developed, kind of getting into what, for all intents and purposes, is kind of the hinterland.
Right.
And it was an area that I'm very close to what is today, I guess it's Richland Fashion Mall still?
Oh, yeah. Technically, yes.
Okay, technically. That area that used to be Richland Mall when I was growing up, in that area, Quinine Hill. Quinine Hill was an area that a number of families established homes during the antebellum period to kind of get away from downtown Columbia. So that's some of the earlier history. There were, of course, plantations outside of Columbia to the east and whatnot, and that included parts of Forest Acres.
Yeah. I find it interesting that people use Forest Acres as their summer home from downtown Columbia. Like Quinine Hill has that big like historic sign, and I think the Hammond family actually developed that right after the turn of the century. But yeah, it's funny to hear older people we sell houses to go, when I told my family I was moving out to Forest Acres, they were like, I'll see you next year,
Right.
And now we tout it as being like super close to downtown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody wants to be, you don't have to get on the interstate to go to the office.
Exactly. How long does it take you to commute? 7 minutes. Sign me up.
I use the exact same distance, 7 minutes. That's my go-to.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that Forest Acres, it continues to capture people's imagination. Whether you're from Columbia or kind of the area in general, or you're new to the city, a lot of people kind of gravitate to that area because, as we said, the proximity to downtown and things that are going on there.
So, in complete contrast to you, Kelly knows everything cool going on in Columbia with Experience Columbia. Just kidding. I love giving John a hard time. So
history is cool, right?
Oh, that is his hashtag. Don't do that.
History's cool. Columbia SC is cool.
We love a hashtag. We love a hashtag.
Experience SC is cool.
Art of Real Estate's cool.
Art of Real Estate's cool.
So I mean, y'all are like the people to know when it comes to hotspots, the new trendy stuff going on. So how's Forest Acres fit into that? It seems like it's an old, antiquated place, but it's not.
No, it's really not. I mean, there are so many great things going on there, and when you look at the types of things that visitors would like to do when they go on vacation, or they go to a sports tournament, or they come for a convention, Forest Acres has a lot of those things. If you're looking for great dining, they have high end, they have family dining. You know, from Taza to Groucho's. You know, you've got a lot of different mix.
Andrew, a videographer that loves Groucho's 3 times a week.
Same, I do too. I love Groucho's. The Apollo. Do not.
He's
sleep
more
on
of
the
like
STP dipper. Thank you.
Oh,
he's more of an
everybody's got their
STP.
favorite.
What
And
do
it
you,
takes
extra
a
sauce?
minute to figure out like which thing is your thing. Like the first time I went there, I was like, I don't know what to get. But then you find it, and then it's like you never want to get anything else.
They're about to
Good
name a
stuff.
sandwich after him. He goes so often.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
That's like iconic.
Moving along.
But yes, there's so much to do in Forest Acres, and just with shopping. Trenholm Plaza is amazing. They have some great new shops and stores, local fashion, Copeland's, which is a old favorite.
Yeah.
So lots of great things to do when people come into town. We can send them there for excellent shopping as well.
Absolutely. So I guess I should step back a little bit, and I'm totally off script. So jump in.
Surprise, surprise. I mean,
It's an organic discussion.
It says on there, jump in when you're ready.
That was really dramatic.
So yeah.
the notes he gave me were ask a really good follow-up question. That's
Very
it. That's all
detailed.
I'm supposed to do is ask good follow-up questions
Or ask any question.
or
But
tell him to stop talking.
Go ahead, please. What questions do you have?
I don't have one yet.
So, Experience Columbia. I'm honestly a little ignorant to the organization. I was asking you a couple of questions beforehand, but in an elevator pitch,
Pitch.
that one.
Elevator
Sorry, I'm still thinking about Groucho's. What do y'all do?
So essentially, we inspire travel to the Columbia region, and that includes everything in Richland County, Lexington County, and the city of Columbia. So, which includes Forest Acres.
Nice.
So typically, if before you move to a place, you're going to want to visit that place. Sometimes they kind of, you inadvertently decide to move somewhere because you visited there and loved it so much.
Right.
But usually, travel is a part of that process. So we inspire travel to our region in the form of meetings, conventions, sports, and leisure travel. So those are kind of the 4 buckets that we try to attract travel to the region within those realms. And the reason we do that is to drive economic impact to our local businesses. So we want to support those shops, those stores, those hotels, those restaurants, any place anyone would go when they're on a vacation or on a trip. We are driving economic impact there to support our locals here in Columbia through travel.
I have a random question, but it's to do with the fort. Because I always
I was just thinking about the fort. Yeah.
I try to explain to people when they talk about Columbia, I travel a lot and they're like military town, but we're not. I mean, we are.
Well, we're totally military town.
Yes.
But we're not. Like when you leave when you leave the fort, you don't see what most military towns look like.
Well, I'd say that's probably fair. Depends. That's broad brushstroke, but fair.
Okay, good. I like big brushstrokes. So tourism, I mean, the fort doesn't really drive tourism. They kind of do their own thing.
Well, they totally drive tourism because they have a graduation
Like
for basic
every
training
Thursday.
every week. So you have people coming from all corners of the country to Columbia, South Carolina
right.
that may never have come to our area before. And then, our kind of thing is when they come here, they don't know what to expect, but they usually fall in love with it. So that's kind of where we want to encourage them to come. And sometimes it's kind of a gimme, like they have to come here because that's where their soldiers graduating. And so they will get here, but then we will encourage them to kind of dig deeper, here, maybe do some things, maybe get out and we'll put like military discounts and things that they can enjoy on our website. And just kind of try to deepen their experience while they're here. So they'll want to come back.
That makes sense.
And I would say that Columbia is probably the best military town in the United States because of this.
Agreed.
When people are stationed here in Columbia, be it for a couple of years, maybe a couple of months or whatnot, oftentimes they come back to Columbia to retire.
Absolutely.
And then they become an integrated part of the fabric of our community. And as such, what we see today is just as much a part of them and we of they. So it is a strong military town, but it's not one that you would necessarily think of.
Right.
You draw back and you look at a map, and really, Columbia and Forest Acres is part of a much bigger complex. You look at Fort Jackson; it's huge,
Right.
and it's kind of a city apart from another city, apart from another city.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize too that like the fort does give some recreation. I mean, it's gotten a little harder to get on the fort, but like road biking. I mean, there's
incredible cycle.
There's a
miles.
water park.
Yeah.
Water park.
Water park.
Golf course.
True.
Golf course.
Right.
That's
They have
exactly
you
some
have a
weird hours,
connection.
I think,
Yeah.
right? You can only do it like
you go
your-
jogging there.
Mhm.
Really long distances, like really long.
jogging. No thanks.
Running.
Yes. Run.
I know what
A
jogging
slow
is.
run.
Thanks, John.
Uh-huh.
I've seen
Jogging
people do
slightly slower. It's okay.
it. So I was like, we feel like in our company that we want to always show the hot spots because people will look on price and location.
Mhm.
We think location's driving it. And then people will look at price to how close they can get to it. So that's why we think the Forest Drive area and the Forest Acres area is really becoming one of the newer hotspots. And obviously that's where a lot of the money's going. Trader Joe's and Lowe's Foods and Cardinal Crossing and Trenholm Plaza and Verde, which Mary Lane eats Verde like every day now.
So good.
It is so good.
So we really think it's interesting. And we're curious a little bit on how historic Columbia is playing into the revitalization of houses back there, or it's not the city of Columbia and Forest Acres or some of it. So how do y'all help ensure that the mid-century modern is protected and everything else?
Well, primarily what we do as a preservation organization, as an educational institution, is convey to people the important things in their neighborhood, their built culture and whatnot. And so just because Forest Acres is outside of Columbia, still, in Richland County, and that's part of our umbrella as well. So we don't necessarily stop right there on Forest Drive and go, got to turn back. So we very much are engaged with folks in Forest Acres, and from a personal perspective, that's where I grew up. I grew up in Columbia, went to Cardinal Newman. When it used to be where now Cardinal Crossing is. And so I'm a little old school in that respect. So I can give you a little bit of perspective on what it used to be like. But I have in my heart kind of a preservation, obviously bent, and it certainly translates into my former neighborhoods and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Kelly, when people are looking to come to Columbia Forest Acres and they want, the resources that your company provides, where do they find that?
Absolutely. So we consolidate everything on our website, which is experiencecolumbiasc.com. And we have, we put out lots of great content. We also, you can follow us on social media. We're at Columbia SC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also put out great blog content. So we put out about 2 blogs a week. We do tend to do some neighborhood blogs. We do have one on Forest Acres and as well as other neighborhoods and districts within the Columbia region. But we just kind of consolidate that information into kind of bite-sized chunks. So you can go to that website and find exactly what you're looking for. We even did one on cool places to buy masks locally when they announced the mask ordinance. So we, people were looking for maybe a cool mask to buy, and we wanted to support some of our local shops and boutiques around town and some of our local makers. We pulled together a blog post on that. So we're just kind of trying to put together resources, certainly for the visitor that's coming into town that may not really know where to start.
Right.
So you can find all of that information on our website.
Yeah. So it's like kind of a one-stop shopping
That's
for
exactly
whether
right.
you live here and are just looking for local, resources, or anybody that's not familiar and just doesn't know where to start with their visit.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that we have put together during the COVID era is we have put some different categories on our searches. So if you're looking for example, a restaurant that where they're doing a certain type of safety precaution or protocol, you can search by that category and find a restaurant, and you can search by different neighborhood as well.
That's
so you can just enter those fields, whether you're looking for a hotel that's offering certain things, you can add those into your search. We've always had the search feature, but we've just kind of added some different protective equipment type features into that search so people can find that information when they're traveling here.
Awesome. I think that's a great resource.
So I always like to ask this question because there's no right or wrong answer, but having a crystal ball, like, what do you see Forest Acres being or becoming in the next 5 years? The area, mainly the Trenholm. I mean, to get more specific, like the Forest Drive area, because Forest Acres can be big.
I think it's just going to continue to grow and flourish. I think, we live in that area, and it's just a great place to raise a family. There are certainly, you don't have to leave the area if you don't want to, though, most people would want to get out and explore, but there's really everything you need that's right there. And I think that just some of these new developments where the Bad Daddy's Burgers and, some of these new, the Nothing But Cakes and, these little pockets pockets of different things are continually updating.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's just great to see those things pop up and, but still, to keep that historic integrity of some of the homes, and families are moving in and fixing up these homes, and just keeping these neighborhoods really fresh and nice looking. So it's great.
Yeah, when I think of where we may be in the next several years, I kind of look at where we are now, and we're benefiting, I think, in many respects from obviously all of the infrastructure that has heretofore been put in the neighborhood. I think of like some of the most incredible gardens that people have, some of their private homes and things of that nature, private gardens. Also, obviously, look to Trenholm Plaza, transformed very much from what I used to know back in the day. A really nice job with that, and I think if you look at Trenholm Plaza, it can be informative, and hopefully that could stimulate revitalization in other areas for that kind of second generation mall, such as what we had at Richland Mall. I see Forest Drive continuing to develop, and I think there'll be further small businesses going in there.
Right.
I think more and more people will probably continue to take a good hard look at rehabilitation of 1950s and 1960s ranch style houses, split levels. There are some areas that have new housing because there have been large lots that have been subdivided, and that's always building the tax base. So that's good. More people, density of housing. I think that people will continue to appreciate what they have, and also look to what do we want to make sure we don't become.
Right.
Because sometimes you can be almost too successful.
Sure.
And I think that there will probably be those who say, well, let's look at development over in here where perhaps we haven't had as much.
Right.
What would be good for pedestrians or cyclists or so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I think personally watching like the roads like Idalia and stuff, where they've taken these smaller 2,000 or 1,500 square foot bungalows or ranch style houses and tear them down and build these more modern, similar style houses, more of I feel like a cottage farm mix. I mean, I just bought a 1954 mid-century modern, like old, old, and we're loving on it hard right now. And so I do appreciate, I do want to find a way with the city and Historic Columbia and everybody and developers, because as these hotspots continue to fill in, like everywhere else in the world, Nashville and everywhere else, like progress has to come. But I do think we'll be restricted by the infrastructure. We're not as bad as Lexington, but Forest Drive is only going to be Forest Drive. It's not getting much wider, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how supply keeps up with demand, and how the city and the preservation people play together to make sure that we don't kind of choke that thing out.
I think, coming from a history perspective too, I'd like to see further awareness of some of the really cool things that we have in Forest Acres. Those touchstones to some of the early to mid 19th century history. Not too many people know about it, but we have the Stork Landrum chimney, which is part of the old brickyard condominiums are there now. They've been there since about 1976. Before that, that was an active brick manufacturing, and even before that, that's where they made alkaline glaze stoneware, which, if for those people who are interested in alkaline glaze stoneware, and you think of Edgefield pottery, Edgefield pottery came to Columbia in the 1830s, and we were manufacturing it as well. So there's a big story there. Of course, we had mills, and if you think about mills, there's the ruin of Fisher's Mill.
Is that the one right there behind Trim Plaza?
It is, yeah. And of course, like we said, we've got some early 19th century properties in the area too, mid 19th century properties, but just that kind of awareness in general. And there's a lot of interesting history about how the neighborhoods developed in that post-World War II period. I think there also needs to be an awareness of just how certain infrastructure came to be. Who made those roads that, pushed out when you're looking at Trenholm Road, that was something where prison labor was impressed and used for that very purpose. So there are aspects of our history that aren't necessarily wonderful all the time, but it's something to be aware of. It's something you need to know about. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, one cool thing I read up on was the reason Forest Acres actually incorporated and became a city is because when I forget the president's name now that did the New Deal, he was giving money. FDR. So they built.
Like the president of the United States.
That one. Yes.
Yes, that one.
President of Forest Acres.
Okay, I didn't know what you're talking.
But they built the road out from Columbia, the old Camden Highway, to make it connect. And I was like, that was pretty interesting. They took advantage as business people to build a city, which I thought was pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank y'all so much for being on our show today. We've learned a ton. And you want to tell people the website one more time where they can?
Yes, it's experiencecolumbiasc.com, and follow us at Columbia SC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Yeah,
So
they've
you
got
can-
some great photos and great
Yes,
social
our
media.
Instagram is really fun and inspirational, and we'll showcase a lot of neat things that you may not have known about the Columbia region, and then you can go out and check them out.
Absolutely.
And ours is historiccolumbia.org. And we too have a great deal of information for folks who are from Columbia and Richland County and those who are just visiting. So we encourage everyone to take a look at and see what we have. And often we partner
Absolutely.
with all of our friends here. So
Yes.
thank you again.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast to stay relevant on all the things happening in the Midlands. And we'll see you in the next one.